I mean, of course, I never do see them ever.
Oh, you don't?
In the real life.
Because you're out here and...
Because I mean, you know, I don't really have any friends.
Diane Keaton has spent decades lighting up screens with charm, honesty, and an offbeat humor all her own. But what happens when someone who's always played nice finally drops the filter? This time, Keaton isn't holding back. Forget polite smiles and careful interviews. She's spilling the names of the 5 actors who truly tested her patience. From overlooked rivalries to personal letdowns, these are the 5 actors she actually hated the most. And one of them will make you do a serious double-take. Number 5. Meryl Streep. Meryl Streep is an undisputed Hollywood icon. She's been called one of the most celebrated actresses of all time, with a career spanning decades and more awards and nominations than most actors can dream of. It would seem logical that any fellow actress in Hollywood would want to be part of Meryl's inner circle. Yet Diane Keaton, another legendary star with an equally impressive career, never really became close friends with her. That's not to say there was any animosity between them. On the contrary, Keaton has often spoken with nothing but respect for Streep's talent and work ethic. However, they never truly clicked on a personal level. There are rumors that this disconnect stems from their very different personalities. Meryl is known for her disciplined, focused, and almost scholarly approach to acting, a persona that translates into her everyday interactions. Diane, by contrast, is known for her quirky, offbeat humor and casual, almost breezy style. Some Hollywood insiders whisper that they simply moved in different worlds, gravitating toward different types of colleagues. Whether or not those rumors are accurate is impossible to verify, but they do fit with the public images we have of both women, one meticulous and formal, the other relaxed and eccentric. Despite this supposed distance, Diane Keaton has never expressed anything less than admiration for Streep's work. In interviews, Keaton has been effusive in praising Streep's ability to transform into any character, calling her one of the most important artists of our time. Streep herself, when asked about Keaton, has often been polite and gracious, although never particularly personal. Even if they weren't swapping phone numbers or meeting up outside of award shows, they maintained a level of professional respect that is hardly surprising given the elite circles they navigate. The distance surely does not mean that there was ever a feud, more like a polite formality that never evolved into friendship. Occasionally, rumors of tensions between the two have emerged, especially when tabloids needed extra drama for big Hollywood events. Competitive subcurrents have also been speculated about, again, unsubstantiated. Both women emerged in the scene around the same time. Both have circled in and out of awards consideration over the decades for their performances, and both have indisputably maintained reputations as fiercely independent actresses who've charted their own paths. Whether such competitiveness caused a further schism between them is an open question, one whose repetition by some entertainment journalists is its truest claim. However, when pressed, Diane has always dismissed any so-called rivalry. In fact, she spoke fondly of Streep with a twinkle in her eye, even treating herself to a little self-deprecating humor, saying that for competition, one could never hope to match up against Streep, that epitome of excellence. If Keaton ever felt insecure about anything, it may have stemmed less from personal friction between the two and more from the sense that it was always going to be tough to share the stage with someone who always seemed to be out there. This dubious notion that tension has ever existed between the two has generally been maintained by outsiders. It is a classic case of the Hollywood rumor mill transforming professionalism into drama. While this seems to indicate that the two exist in two different worlds, Keaton, whose close collaborators have included such filmmakers as Woody Allen and Warren Beatty, And actors with a loose-limbed easiness to be around persona on set seems to be the opposite pole to Streep, who is known for her carefully selected projects and an unbelievably disciplined attitude toward her work that almost nobody can match. During all public appearances together, the Golden Globes, the Oscars, the two rarely, if ever, talked outside of passing pleasantries. To the observer, Keaton and Meryl were cordial to one another. The salt on the fact that they were at one point thought to be secret enemies is a rumor at best, with little credibility. Others have dreamed of a Hollywood high school, with cliques and feuds everywhere. That's good. For gossip, perhaps. But the truth is far less glamorous. Two living legends have charted their paths, but seldom crossed. Diane Keaton and Meryl Streep were just never that close. It is what it is. Keaton continued carving a career on her own, defined by her own particular mix of charm, humor, and style. Streep, in a miraculous manner, morphed into most ado actress of her generation. While somewhere the tale goes into hatred grounds or talks of some long-ago rivalry, it mostly epitomizes two drastically different personalities whose journeys ran parallel but never crossed. Hollywood would have to shine a bright light on any sparks or conflicts between its renowned stars. But in this case, the most obvious deduction is also the truest. They have mutual respect, mutual appreciation, but never grew close friends. Whether a rumor or not, there will always be an undercurrent in an industry like this. But here, silence speaks volumes, and that is interesting in its own right. And just when you thought that was complicated, the next name on her list adds a whole new twist. Number 4. Al Pacino. Diane Keaton and Al Pacino met on the set of The Godfather in the early 1970s, and what started as a working relationship slowly evolved into one of Hollywood's most memorable off-screen romances. They were, in many ways, an unlikely pair. Keaton was known for her eccentric, light-hearted charm and quick wit, while Pacino was often perceived as intense, brooding, and fiercely private. Yet the sparks between them were impossible to ignore. Pacino was riding the wave of his early fame as Michael Corleone, and Keaton was making her own mark as Kay Adams. Being thrown into such an iconic project together created a connection that felt natural, intense, and passionate, at least at first. As they navigated fame together during the making of the Godfather trilogy, their relationship had its fair share of serious complications. According to interviews Keaton has given over the years, she was genuinely in love with Pacino and hoped that their romance would lead to something lasting. Pacino, on the other hand, was famously commitment-shy. Despite his obvious affection for her, he was hesitant to take the next big step. Pacino wasn't ready to settle down, and Diane could feel the hesitation in his actions long before he ever said the words aloud. This imbalance of expectations and timing became one of the defining challenges in their on and off relationship. There have been long-standing rumors that Keaton even gave Pacino an ultimatum at one point: marriage or breakup, although she herself never publicly confirmed this as fact. Some close to the couple, however, have speculated that this was one of the final cracks that caused them to split. Whether or not that particular ultimatum took place exactly as rumored, what is clear is that Diane hoped for more commitment than Al was able to give. Even years after they parted ways, she spoke of him with a mixture of affection and regret, implying that she had truly hoped for a future together that never materialized. That apathy weighed much on Keaton. Throughout interviews over the years, she has stated that she loved him deeply, and that the years they spent together, especially the stretches during The Godfather Part 2 and Part 3, were among the most passionate of her life. But Pacino had his own rhythm and his own ambitions. Even after many years, he did not easily give his heart to any female. He loved his freedom and was extremely cautious concerning being tied to one person. Diane had to accept that, although it was painful for her at that moment. Even decades later, she remembers their romance with mixed feelings. There is an obvious respect and fondness, but there is also a sadness that it never blossomed into what she wished it could have been. For Keaton, Pacino remained the one she never stopped loving. His name, by the accounts of almost everyone, including Keaton herself, never disappeared from her heart. But she herself also acknowledges that it was that streak of independence that both attracted her to Pacino and also eventually kept him very much at a distance. In this sense, what gave him such appeal was the very factor that kept them from ever being anything more than what they were. Their ebbs and flows were not concerning any difference in temperaments, for they shared the high pressure of being at the center of the greatest Hollywood franchise imaginable. Paparazzi, public interest, and the burden of the Godfather films made it such that privacy could hardly be maintained. There are suggestions, gossip once again, that the constant exposure perhaps posed yet another roadblock. Pacino, who feels very strongly about his private life, might have been smothered by that gaze. Diane, on the contrary, being more vocally opinionated, and more bohemian, would have preferred to live out loud. This divergence in dealing with public life could have increased the tension between the two of them. Both actors went on to have rich and thriving careers long after the demise of their relationship. Yes, Pacino is one of the long-standing revered figures regarding his movie stardom, whereas Diane built her own form of legacy in that she became one of the most loved actresses of her generation. Now and again, they cross paths with each other, mostly at award ceremonies, some tributes, and ever-present retrospectives for The Godfather. Even then, however, there is a genuine camaraderie between them. Diane frequently says the nicest things about Pacino, revealing how much she appreciates his craft and how it has affected her own life. It would be as though both knew that what they had was unique, even though, through all that, it was never enough time for Diane. Ultimately, Diane Keaton's and Al Pacino's story is marked by passionate connection and heartbreakingly dubious compatibility. This is a kind of real-life romance that feels almost as tragic as some of the roles they played. He would not commit to plans for the future with Diane, who did love him and hoped for a future with him that never was. However, appreciation for him has lingered throughout the years. Pacino himself rarely speaks of those things in public, but Keaton's frankness describes a love that was surely real, although never powerful enough to last forever. Some more scandalous details will probably remain shrouded in speculation, but what remains true is that their story is one powerful entry in that bittersweet catalog of old Hollywood romance stories that linger long after the cameras have stopped rolling. Every chapter in Keaton's life has its own tone, and the next one reveals a surprising twist that's impossible to ignore. Number 3. Sarah Silverman. Diane Keaton met Sarah Silverman at a glitzy Hollywood event many years ago. It was one of those nights that brings together an unlikely mix of actors, comedians, and filmmakers under one roof, all dressed to impress and hoping to make new connections. Keaton was already an icon in her own right, someone whose career spanned decades and genres. Silverman, meanwhile, was making a name for herself as a bold, fearless comedian who could make an entire room burst into laughter with her quick wit. That first meeting was pleasant enough. Diane thought Sarah was hilarious, even if her style was a little more risque than Diane's usual circle of friends. Although Diane appreciated Sarah's humor, the two never became close. Hollywood events are often full of quick exchanges, polite hellos, and fleeting small talk, and that was the case with Keaton and Silverman. Diane respected her craft and could admire the way Silverman had broken boundaries in comedy, but their worlds never quite merged. Diane is known for her dry humor and self-deprecating charm, which shares some overlap with Silverman's style. Yet there was never enough there to form a deeper friendship. It was one of those casual encounters that Hollywood is so full of, leaving Diane with the impression that they were two people who simply moved in different circles. In interviews, Keaton has occasionally mentioned meeting Silverman at that party, usually with a warm tone but never anything deeper. "Sarah's funny," she might say with a smile, but that's where it stops. Even though they crossed paths more than once at premieres and awards shows over the years, they stayed distant. Hollywood can seem like a small world, and for people like Diane and Sarah, that world sometimes contains polite smiles and compliments in passing, but not the kind of sustained camaraderie that forms a lasting bond. Keaton herself has never expressed any ill will. Rather, it was one of those purely cordial acquaintances that never grew into something significant. Some rumors suggest that Diane might have taken umbrage at Sarah's edgier comedy and outspoken nature, something that Diane keeps more subtle and self-effacing. Some tabloid gossip speculated that Sarah's poking fun left Diane uncomfortable. However, that too is pure speculation. Keaton and Silverman have never confirmed anything along those lines. Bernhard is also said to be polite and respectful towards other styles of comedy, even those that are miles apart from her own. If anything, this is more a matter of differing sensibilities within their various comedic styles, rather than a personal clash. More telling is the fact that while they may have respect for each other professionally, they rarely work creatively with one another. Silverman is the consummate creator of comedy and satire, with shows such as the Sarah Silverman Program and a slew of stand-up specials. In contrast, at least half of Keaton's famous roles have been in earnest dramas or light-hearted romantic comedies, casting her significantly into yet another area. The two creatively inhabit worlds that do not naturally intersect, so even from a distance, they may appreciate each other's work. Yet there has not, until now, seemed any good reason for collaboration or engagement outside those few occasions that they happen to cross paths. And this is what happens in the showbiz world. Everyone mostly admires each other's talents, but that admiration does not always translate into friendship. Parties and premieres may appear warm and welcoming, but beyond pleasantries, bonding rarely occurs without a joint engagement or personal spark. Thus, in the case of Diane Keaton and Sarah Silverman, they kept it at an acquaintance instead of friendship. After all, Diane Keaton's world centers on her long-standing creative collaborations and inner circle of friends, while Sarah Silverman's friendships seem to revolve more around fellow comedians and writers. It must be said that Diane Keaton, as of late, has been very choosy on whom she lets into her more private life. It includes actors and directors she has worked with. And perhaps that is why someone like Sarah Silverman, a bright, funny, successful, and all that never got to be anything more than a face in the crowd at industry gatherings. Keaton has filled her life outside of performing with quite different pursuits: architecture, photography, nurturing her children, and spending time away from the Hollywood scene. Even if she does admire the talent of Silverman, much of what seems is that Keaton never felt the desire to bring the acquaintance any closer. At the end of the day, Diane Keaton's and Sarah Silverman's story is a simple one. Diane met her at a Hollywood event, found her funny, and went on her merry way. There was no fallout, no rivalry, no twisted subplot, just one of those fly-in-the-ointment relationships between Hollywood types that never had the chance to flesh out. Rumors are just part and parcel of this gossip-charged environment, and more often than not, those rumors are true. But the simpler fact is that Keaton and Silverman are pals at best. Both women are immensely talented and pass through the same realm, but have chosen different paths. Sometimes, that's all Hollywood is about. And if you ask Diane about Sarah today, she would probably light up and call her funny. And that would be that. Number 2, Reese Witherspoon. Long before Reese Witherspoon became one of Hollywood's most celebrated and powerful actresses, she was a teenage girl just starting out. And Diane Keaton was one of the first to recognize her talent. Keaton directed Reese in a television movie called Wildflower back in 1991, when Reese was only 14 years old. At the time, Reese was unknown, a promising teenager making her first big impression on a professional set. Even then, Diane could see that she had something special. Reese's bright energy, quick wit, and serious work ethic stood out to Keaton, who was already a Hollywood icon and had worked with many established actors before. Diane often spoke warmly about that experience, sharing that she knew Reese was destined for big things. That early collaboration, though, never blossomed into a long-standing friendship. Diane and Reese went their separate ways after the movie wrapped. It wasn't because of any tension or falling out. They simply traveled different paths. Diane had her established career and personal interests outside of acting, and Reese was just beginning hers. In those early years after Wildflower, there was no reason for their paths to cross again. Reese took on more teenage roles and gradually climbed the ranks into leading lady status, while Diane continued working in her own sphere. They respected one another, but life pulled them into different circles. As Reese's career skyrocketed with hits like Legally Blonde and Walk the Line, Keaton remained an admirer from afar. Diane has publicly acknowledged that she's proud of how far Reese has come and often speaks kindly of her. Rumors once suggested that Keaton might have been jealous of Reese's rise, especially when Reese began producing and took on more behind-the-scenes roles. But these rumors have never been substantiated. In every interview where Keaton mentions Witherspoon, there's no hint of resentment or bitterness. On the contrary, Diane seems genuinely happy that someone she directed at such a young age became so successful. But it would be wrong to state their paths never crossed again. With Hollywood being what it is, their paths have. Crossed at award shows and charity galas. Occasionally, a photographer catches a warm hello or a quick pose together, but that has been the extent of their relationship. While some mentor-protege relationships flourish into lifelong friendships, Diane's and Reese's never did. Their relationship continued to be cordial, friendly, but distant, as is usually the case in Hollywood. Some have wondered if there was more to their story. Rumors occasionally pop up that Keaton was somehow disappointed that Reese didn't reach out more after becoming a star. However, these whispers remain unconfirmed. Diane herself has never spoken publicly about feeling slighted or overlooked by Reese. Given Diane's laid-back personality and independent spirit, it seems unlikely that she would ever demand more attention or contact. Instead, she has always been someone who celebrates other people's success without making it personal. Diane and Reese are said to have very little in common outside of work. According to known gossip, Diane Keaton has the oddest sense of humor and a bohemian lifestyle in which she is a photographer, architecture conservator, and someone who pays little attention to publicity. Or, on the other hand, Reese seems to be all about work, producing, building enterprises like Hello Sunshine, and raising a family. So, while they might appreciate each other from a career standpoint, they walk on opposite paths in life. Probably those differences in lifestyles would account for why they never really trod the path of a personal friendship. In the years since Wildflower, both women have reflected warmly on that early collaboration. Reese praised Diane as one of the first big-name directors who believed in her, whereas Diane expressed pride in having spotted Reese's talent so early on. Beyond those public words, there hasn't been much indication that they became tight. Some might read this one step further, especially in Hollywood, where the absence of a close relationship can seem suspicious. All signs point to just two gifted women moving in different orbits. In the end, the Diane Keaton Reese Witherspoon story demonstrates the fine line between brief mentorship and long-distance admiration. Alan Keaton directed a young Reese long before she became the powerhouse she is today, and from there, they were off on separate paths. Neither quite a feud nor a friendship, it was simply one of those transient Hollywood connections, where nothing invariably counts for much deeper. Though they might not enjoy much of each other's company aside from public events, one can sense the respect still there. A proud Diane Keaton could look back at all Reese has accomplished, while Reese herself knows that Diane was ever in her corner from the beginning, pointed reminder that even a small chapter in someone's career can leave indelible footprints. Additionally, the subtle influence Keaton had on Reese during those early days speaks to the often overlooked power of informal mentorship in Hollywood. Even without sustained contact, Diane's willingness to take a chance on a teenager and treat her as a serious actor likely shaped Reese's understanding of what it means to be valued in a professional setting. That first experience working with a respected, self-possessed woman like Keaton may have quietly informed Reese's own leadership style years later, especially when she began producing and championing other women's stories through her company, Hello, Sunshine. And now we come to this number one actor, someone at the center of a controversy that changed everything. Number 1, Mia Farrow. And then there's Mia Farrow, a name forever tangled up in Diane Keaton's long-standing friendship with Woody Allen. Diane and Mia moved in similar circles for years, part of the same cinematic landscape that shaped the careers of some of Hollywood's most talented actors. They had mutual connections and, at one point, may even have considered each other friends. But whatever connection they had was shattered when serious allegations surfaced against Allen, and Diane chose to stand by him. This decision created a rift between Keaton and Farrow that, by most accounts, was never healed. Keaton and Allen's friendship goes back to the 1970s, spanning decades and multiple films together. That closeness is part of what made Diane's unwavering public support for him so significant after Allen was accused of sexual abuse by Dylan Farrow, Mia's adopted daughter. Mia Farrow stood by Dylan, making public appeals and detailing her painful personal history in interviews. Diane Keaton, meanwhile, defended Allen at nearly every opportunity, even stating in 2018 that she believed him and that she would do so forever. That unshakable loyalty put Keaton and Farrow on opposite sides of one of Hollywood's most heated and heartbreaking debates. While some reports suggest that Farrow felt personally betrayed by Diane's support of Allen, the full story has never been publicly confirmed by either party. It's impossible to say whether Mia ever attempted to repair the fracture privately or whether Diane was receptive to any such outreach. Rumors have circulated that Farrow distanced herself completely from Keaton after these public statements, but those remain unverified. Even so, what is clear is that whatever friendship or polite acquaintance they had once shared was no longer evident after Keaton spoke up for Allen. In Hollywood, where relationships and public appearances are usually tightly curated, taking sides in a controversy as vexed as this one could never be just a political or public relations move. It's something personal. Mia Farrow had every reason to feel protective of her family and really angry with anyone who did not support them publicly. Diane, in turn, felt equally justified in standing by a longtime collaborator and friend she still felt was a good person. That painful dynamic put a long shadow on the future existence of both actresses. Never close with one another, They were forever implicated within the narrative that describes the very public and utterly devastating fallout between Alan and Farrow. Mia Farrow always makes it a point to express her opinions about people associated with Woody Allen. Keaton has not openly expressed her opinion about Mia Farrow, although she has basically defended Allen throughout interviews. Farrow's statements have not only been loud and clear, but also far-reaching on social media, often supporting victims of abuse while referring to Allen's saga as deeply personal. Between them, there have been rumors of Mia's feelings toward Diane ranging from disappointment and resentment. But until one of them says something to that effect, these remain speculations. Yet, one thing that is apparent in public: their paths cross rarely, and there has been no indication of a reconciliation. Wherever awards are held, there seem to be other industry events attended by both these women, who seem to move in utterly different social circles. Diane remains the consummate Hollywood icon, loyal to her friends, while Mia inherits the legacy of a mother who stands by her daughter. That would seal the fate of any attempt at reconciliation, as this controversy that binds them was so deep, and they stood on opposing sides. And that is where we leave the saga of Diane Keaton and Mia Farrow today. These two celebrated actresses might have shared a simple and gregarious history had they not found themselves embroiled in one of Hollywood's most bitter and widely publicized controversies. Keaton acted on her best conscience and sided with a man who had, until then, been an integral part of her career. Farrow questioned her conscience when standing up for her daughter's allegations against him and all others who would not stand with them. Time may not heal the wounds of that rift, since it went on to become a friendship that stood little chance of survival. What had once stood in the way of their friendship with every ounce of success, talent, and mutual connection will never seal this wound. Beyond the personal fracture between Keaton and Farrow, their story reflects a larger reckoning within the film industry, one where women's solidarity and public stances on abuse often determine how relationships will evolve. For Farrow, it wasn't just about losing a former ally, it was about bearing witness to an entire ecosystem that could overlook painful truths to protect its most powerful figures. And for Keaton, standing by Allen wasn't merely a matter of professional loyalty. It became a lasting public choice that forever colored her place in the ongoing discourse surrounding survivors and complicity. And that's the list. 5 surprising names you never thought Diane Keaton would call out. If you enjoyed this deep dive, hit that like button. Drop a comment telling us which one shocked you most. And don't forget to subscribe for more Hollywood stories like this. Stick around. The next video you see on your screen is packed with even juicier secrets you won't want to miss. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.